The night was heavy with smoke and silence. Broken ships lay scattered across the barren land, their sharp edges glowing under the weak moonlight. Amid the ruins, a young alien girl crawled through the dust, her small hands trembling as she searched for a way out. Her skin was pale, marked with cuts and bruises, her eyes wide with fear. She had been running since morning, running from hunters, from soldiers, from death itself. Then she felt it, the sharp pull at her ankle. A hidden rope trap caught her foot and dragged her down hard onto the ground. She cried out, a thin sound that vanished into the wind. Her heart pounded, her body froze. She knew what this meant. It was a human trap. Slow footsteps echoed from the shadows. A tall figure emerged, carrying a weapon that gleamed in the dim light. It was a human. Broad shoulders, steady walk, silent eyes. The girl gasped, her body shivering. Stories she had heard since childhood flooded her mind. Humans were ruthless. Humans killed without mercy. Humans did not spare the weak. Now she was caught, and there was no escape. The human stopped only a few steps away. He looked down at her with unreadable eyes. His face was hard but not cruel. His grip on the weapon was strong. The alien girl struggled against the rope, twisting, clawing at the dirt, but the knot only tightened, burning her skin. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, "Please, end it quickly." Her voice was faint, almost broken. The human tilted his head, as if he had not expected those words. He did not move. He did not strike. The silence grew heavier, broken only by the distant crackle of fire in the ruins. She pressed her eyes shut, bracing herself for pain. She expected the sharp edge of his blade, the final strike, but it never came. Instead, she heard the soft clink of metal. Her eyes opened wide and confused. The human crouched near her, cutting the rope with a small knife. Her body went stiff, unable to believe it. One pull, and her ankle was free, the burning pain fading. The girl's breath caught in her throat. This was wrong. Humans did not free captives. She scrambled back on the ground, dragging herself away. But he did not chase. He only stood, silent, calm, his weapon lowered at his side. She stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her mind screamed at her to run, yet her legs refused to move. Why had he freed her? What was he planning? The human reached into a pouch at his belt. He pulled out a small metal flask and placed it carefully on the ground between them. The girl blinked, confused. The flask reflected the moonlight, shining faintly. Her lips were cracked, her throat dry as stone. She knew what it was, water, but why would he give it to her? Her hands trembled as she reached forward slowly. Her eyes never left his face, waiting for a trick, waiting for the sudden strike. But the human did not move. She grabbed the flask, lifted it to her lips. Cold water touched her tongue, spreading life through her weak body. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time not of fear. The human finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You are safe now." The alien girl froze, her mind spinning. Safe? From him? A human? It made no sense. She had expected death, but instead, he had given her freedom. The ruins groaned in the distance, the night wind carrying the scent of smoke and blood. The girl clutched the flask tightly, her heart racing with a strange new feeling. Not trust, not yet, but something close to hope. She whispered to herself, "Why?" But the human gave no answer. He only turned his gaze toward the horizon, as if waiting for something far beyond. And in that moment, the girl realized her life was no longer her own story. It had been captured, yes, but not by death, captured by something even more dangerous, the mercy of a human. The girl sat on the cold ground, her back pressed against broken stone. The water flask still in her hands, her lips trembling as if the taste was a dream. She could not stop staring at the human, tall and silent, standing only a few steps away. Every breath he took made her chest tighten. Her people had told her that humans were monsters, killers who showed no mercy, but this man had freed her instead of killing her, and that confused her more than fear itself. Her thoughts raced. Maybe he was playing with her, stretching out her suffering. Maybe he wanted her to trust him before he struck. Her body trembled at every small sound, her eyes locked on his hands, yet he only stood, calm, like stone, his weapon resting low, not raised. That made her more afraid than if he had attacked her. What kind of human spared a weak enemy? The silence between them grew thick. Finally, the girl whispered, "Why did you do this?" Her voice cracked, half broken. The human glanced at her but gave no answer. Instead, he crouched and pulled something from his pack. Wrapped in cloth, it smelled of food. He placed it on the ground, sliding it toward her with one hand. The alien girl blinked, her heart beating faster. Food. Her body ached with hunger, but her mind screamed that it could be a trick. She remembered the warnings of her elders. Humans use food to lure the weak, then chain them, then burn them. Her hand reached forward, then stopped. She looked into his eyes, searching for cruelty, but all she saw was calm silence, as if he was waiting, not forcing. Her stomach growled, and shame burned her cheeks. Slowly, carefully, she picked up the wrapped food. She brought it near her nose, sniffing. It was simple. Bread and something salty. She bit into it, tiny at first, then more desperate as taste filled her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she ate, her pride broken by her hunger. The human only watched quietly, never mocking, never smiling. That silence was strange, almost heavier than words. After finishing, she wiped her mouth with shaking fingers. Her voice came out again, weaker than before. "You saved me. You fed me. Why?" Still, he gave no answer. He stood and looked toward the dark sky. A streak of smoke cut across the horizon, the remains of war burning far away. He seemed distant, as if his mind was somewhere else. The girl frowned, feeling smaller. She was used to hate, used to cruel words. But his silence was worse. She hugged her knees close, whispering to herself, "Maybe he pities me. Maybe he wants me as a slave." Her heart beat fast at the thought, but when she looked at him again, he was turning his weapon away, setting it against a stone. No chains, no ropes, no cruel smile. It did not look like a trap, yet she could not understand. Why was he different? Hours passed in silence, broken only by the sound of the wind. The girl's eyes grew heavy, but she forced herself awake. She feared he would kill her the moment she closed her eyes. But when her body finally gave up, she drifted into sleep, curled tightly like a child. When she woke, weak morning light brushed the ruins. She gasped, realizing she was still alive. The human sat nearby, sharpening his blade with slow, steady movements. His eyes turned to her, not cold, not cruel, just watching. Her chest tightened again. She whispered, "You should have killed me. It would be easier." The words surprised even herself. He stopped sharpening the blade, his hands still. For the first time, his lips moved, his voice low and steady. "Not easier for me." The girl froze, shocked to hear such words. Not easier for him? What did that mean? Why would a human care about killing a small alien girl? Her mind spun with questions. She felt trapped not by ropes this time, but by his mercy. It was strange, heavy, confusing. She wanted to hate him, to spit at him, to call him a liar. But deep inside, a seed of warmth pressed against her fear. She shook her head violently, whispering, "No, I cannot trust him. I must not trust him." Yet the memory of water, food, and freedom burned inside her chest. The day stretched long. The human packed his things and gestured for her to follow. She hesitated, her pride screaming, no, her fear screaming, yes. If she stayed, hunters would find her. If she went with him, she might face another trap. Both paths were dangerous, but his shadow moved ahead, steady, silent, waiting. Against all her doubts, she stood and followed, one step at a time. Her chains were gone, but her heart was tied to questions. Every step she took behind him was filled with fear and curiosity. He had spared her life. He had given her food, but what would he do next? She whispered under her breath, "Mercy can be crueler than death." And yet, part of her heart wanted to believe it was real. The path stretched long through the ruins. Broken towers leaned like tired giants, their shadows cutting across the ground. Dust swirled with every step, carrying the scent of ash and smoke. The alien girl walked slowly behind the human, her legs weak, her heart heavy. Each footstep felt like a choice she had not made herself. She did not trust him, but she could not leave him either. The silence pressed on her ears, no words, no comfort, only the steady rhythm of boots against dirt. She hugged her thin arms around herself, her body shaking with both cold and fear. Every few steps she glanced at him, searching for clues in his face, but his eyes stayed forward, sharp and unreadable. He did not look back, yet somehow she felt he was aware of her every move. Her ankle ached from the rope burn, each step made her wince, but she bit her lip and kept going. She did not want him to see her weakness. Her people had mocked her enough, called her useless, called her too small to survive. She would not let a human see her broken. Not now, not ever. The road grew narrower, winding between cliffs of black stone. Strange sounds echoed in the distance like whispers carried by the wind. The girl froze, her ears twitching. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Something is following us." The human did not stop. He only adjusted his grip on the weapon slung across his back. His silence was strange, but his steady pace gave her an odd sense of safety. Minutes stretched like hours. Her stomach tightened with hunger again, but she said nothing. She had already eaten his food once and hated how much she had needed it. She did not want to depend on him, but her steps grew slower, weaker, her legs trembling. Finally, she stumbled and fell against the hard ground. The human stopped at last, turning toward her. His eyes scanned her face, her shaking hands, her bruised knees. He reached for his pack again, pulling out more food. The girl shook her head quickly. "No, I do not want your tricks." Her voice cracked, her pride louder than her pain, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. The human crouched, setting the food gently on a stone near her. Then he stepped back, giving her space, saying nothing. The girl stared at the meal, her throat dry. Her pride battled her hunger, her fear battled her need. At last she snatched it up and ate, small bites at first, then faster. Tears burned her eyes as she chewed. She hated herself for taking his mercy, yet could not stop. When she finished, she wiped her mouth and glared at him. "Why are you helping me?" she demanded, her voice sharp. The human studied her for a long moment. Finally, he said in his quiet voice, "Because you are alive." The girl blinked, her anger falling silent. Alive? That was his reason? It was too simple, too strange, too human. The silence returned, heavier now with questions. The girl stood again, following him with unsteady steps. The road opened wider, leading into a valley of dead machines. Huge metal beasts lay, broken, their once glowing eyes dark and empty. She shivered, remembering how those machines had hunted her people. Her voice whispered, "This place is cursed." The human did not reply, only tightened his jaw and kept moving. As they walked, the girl's mind churned. She thought of her people, of how they would spit at her for walking beside a human. They would call her a traitor, a fool, a shame to her kind. Her chest ached with the weight of it, and yet, when she looked at the human's steady back, she felt something she had never known among her own kind. Safety. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in dark red. The human finally stopped near a broken wall. He began gathering scraps of wood, building a small fire. The girl stood a distance away, hugging herself. The firelight grew, warm and soft against the cold air. She felt drawn to it, but her fear kept her frozen. The human sat near the fire, his face lit with flickering orange. For a long time he said nothing. Then his voice broke the silence, low and steady. "You can rest here. No one will harm you." The girl's heart twisted. No one had ever said such words to her before, not even her own people. She lowered herself slowly near the edge of the firelight, her body still tense, her eyes wide and watchful. The night deepened, shadows stretched long. The girl listened to the crackle of fire and the quiet sound of his breathing. Her thoughts circled endlessly. Fear, hunger, doubt, hope. She whispered to herself, "He is human. He should have killed me." Her eyes drifted closed against her will, and for the first time in years, she slept without nightmares. But in the shadows beyond the firelight, eyes were watching, waiting, moving closer. The silent walk was not yet over, and soon the real danger would arrive. The night fire crackled softly, sending sparks into the cold air. The alien girl sat near the flames, her knees hugged to her chest, her eyes heavy with sleep. The human sat a short distance away, sharpening his blade slowly, his face calm but alert. The silence between them was strange, heavy, filled with things unsaid. But in the darkness beyond the firelight, something stirred. The girl's ears twitched, catching faint whispers. She lifted her head quickly, her heart racing. Her people had sharp hearing, and she knew what she had heard. Steps, low voices, moving closer. She whispered with a shaking voice, "Someone is here." The human's eyes narrowed, his hand moving to his weapon without hesitation. The shadows broke, and figures stepped into the firelight. Tall, armed, their faces familiar to the girl, her own people, hunters from her tribe. Their armor glistened faintly, their eyes hard and cruel. The girl gasped, her body shaking. They had come for her. One of the hunters snarled, pointing at her. There she is, the weak one, the runaway. His voice dripped with hate. The others laughed, their eyes burning with anger and mockery. They looked at the human next, their lips curling. And she hides behind a monster. The girl trembled, hiding her face in shame. She had always been the smallest, always mocked, always unwanted. Now her people had found her again, and they would not forgive her. Her chest tightened as the hunters raised their weapons. They shouted at her, "You walk with a human, you shame us. You are nothing but dirt." The girl's heart sank, tears filling her eyes. She whispered to herself, "This is the end." She expected the human to step away, to leave her. Why would he fight her own people for her? Why would he protect someone worthless? But the human did not step back. Instead, he moved forward, placing himself between her and the hunters. His stance was strong, his weapon raised. The firelight danced on the steel, his shadow tall and unshaken. The hunters growled in rage. They expected him to run, not to stand. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Her own people had abandoned her, called her weak. But this stranger, this human, stood before her like a shield. Her body trembled with confusion. Why would he risk his life for her? Why would a human care at all? The leader of the hunters stepped closer, his voice sharp. "Move aside, human. This is not your fight." But the human's voice came calm and steady. "It is my fight now." The hunters roared with laughter, their cruel voices echoing through the ruins. They raised their weapons higher, ready to strike. The girl grabbed the human's arm, her voice breaking. "Don't. They will kill you." But he only glanced back at her, his eyes steady. "I won't let them touch you." Her heart stopped, her body frozen. No one had ever said such words for her, not even her own blood. The battle came fast. The hunters charged with sharp blades and snarling cries. The human moved like stone and fire combined. His blade clashed with theirs, sparks flying into the night. The sound of steel rang in the air, heavy and fierce. The girl covered her ears, tears falling as she watched. The human fought with strength and precision. Each strike forced the hunters back. Each block held firm. But they were many, and he was only one. Blood ran down his arm from a cut, but he did not fall. His body stood tall, unbroken. Every movement screamed of determination, not cruelty. The girl's chest ached with fear and awe. She had always been told humans killed for pleasure, but this human fought not for himself, but for her, for the weak, for the unwanted. Her people shouted curses at her. "Look at her hiding behind him. She is nothing." Something inside her cracked. She pressed her hands to her chest, whispering through her tears, "Why? Why does he protect me when my own people will not?" Her eyes locked on his back, broad and unyielding. Each time the hunter struck, he stood in front of her, like a wall, like a storm, like a promise. The fight dragged long into the night. One hunter fell, then another, their weapons clattering against the dirt. The rest pulled back, their voices full of anger and shame. The leader spat on the ground, pointing at the girl. "You are dead to us," he shouted. "Stay with your monster, for you will never belong to us again." With that, they vanished into the shadows, their rage echoing in the dark. The girl fell to her knees, her breath shaking, her heart pounding. The human stood above her, blood dripping from his arm, his chest rising heavy, but his eyes remained steady, calm, strong. He lowered his weapon slowly, the firelight glowing against his face. The girl looked at him, her lips trembling. You saved me," she whispered. He did not answer, only offered his hand to help her stand. Her small fingers shook as they touched his. And in that touch, something unspoken passed between them. Fear, confusion, and something new. Trust. The fire crackled on, shadows shifting around them, but in her heart, the girl knew something had changed forever. Her people had rejected her, called her worthless, yet a human had chosen to fight for her life. And that choice would echo louder than any blade. The battle was over, but the night still carried its weight. The hunters had left, their threats echoing faint in the distance. The fire burned low, flickering softly, its light painting shadows across the broken stones. The alien girl sat near the flames, her body still trembling. Her mind replayed the fight again and again, each strike, each scream, each moment she thought the human would fall. But he had not fallen. He had stood like iron, fought like fire. Every wound on his body spoke of pain, yet his eyes had not wavered. She glanced at him now, sitting across the fire, cleaning the blood from his arm. His face was calm, steady, as if saving her life had been nothing at all. Her lips parted, but no words came. She had so many questions, so many fears. Why would he fight for her? Why would he risk his life for someone her own people had rejected? The fire popped, breaking the silence, and at last her voice slipped out. "You should have let them take me," she whispered. Her words were small, but they shook in the quiet night. The human lifted his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. "They would have killed you," he said, his voice deep and calm. The girl shivered, hugging her arms tighter around herself. "That is what I deserved," she whispered, her eyes wet with tears, his brow furrowed, his voice sharper now. "No one deserves that." She looked away, the flames blurring through her tears. Her people had always told her she was worthless, too weak, too small, a burden. She had believed them for so long that his words felt like lies. Why would a human, of all creatures, say something so different? She pressed her lips together, struggling with the storm inside her chest. After a long silence, she asked the question that had burned inside her since the rope trap. "Why didn't you kill me?" Her voice cracked, filled with fear and confusion. The human's hand stilled, his eyes growing distant, as if he was remembering something far away. The firelight caught the sharp lines of his face, making him look older, heavier. When he finally spoke, his words came slow, like stones dropping into deep water. "Once, I failed to protect someone," he said. The girl's eyes widened, her breath catching. "She was small, helpless, and I thought I could reach her in time," he continued, his voice rougher now. "But I was too late, and she was gone." He stared into the fire, his jaw tight, his eyes haunted. "I swore that if I ever had the chance again, I would not let it happen." The girl's chest tightened, her hands shaking as she whispered, "You saved me. Because of her?" He nodded slightly, his eyes still locked on the flames. "Maybe," he said, his voice softer now, "or maybe because it was simply the right thing to do." His words fell heavy in her heart. She could not remember a time when anyone had called her worth saving. Her tears spilled freely now. Ow, hot against her cheeks. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness. But the firelight caught the wetness in her eyes, and the human saw it. He did not mock her. He did not scold her. He only sat in silence, letting her tears fall without judgment. The girl's voice cracked through her sobs. "My own people left me. They called me nothing. They said I was useless." Her shoulders shook as she hugged her knees tighter. "And yet you, a human, you fought for me." She looked at him again, her eyes searching his face for answers. "Why does it hurt more to be saved than to be hated?" The human's eyes softened, a rare warmth in his steady gaze. "Because mercy is harder to carry than hate," he said. The girl froze at his words, her breath shallow. Mercy. She had never thought of it that way. Her heart beat faster, her body torn between shame and something else she could not name. The fire burned lower, its glow soft against the ruins. The girl leaned closer without realizing, drawn by his steady presence. Her tears slowed, her breathing steadied. She whispered almost too softly to hear, "You make me feel like I am not nothing." Her own words startled her, but she did not take them back. The human did not smile, but his eyes held a quiet strength. "You are not nothing," he said firmly. The words struck her chest like thunder. Her people had told her she was worthless all her life, but in this ruined night, with firelight flickering between them, a human had spoken a different truth. The girl wiped her eyes with shaky hands, her heart still heavy, but now carrying something new. Not hope, not fully, but the start of it. She whispered again, her voice trembling. "What happens now?" The human looked past the fire, toward the distant horizon, his voice low, steady. "Now we keep moving, because danger will come again. The girl nodded slowly, her body still weak, but her spirit different. The firelight had burned more than shadows away. It had lit something deep inside her. She had expected him to kill her, expected death in his hands, but instead, she found truth in his words, and that truth would change her more than any blade. The morning light crept slowly across the ruins. Cold mist drifted low over the ground, wrapping the broken stones in silence. The alien girl woke to the sound of footsteps, not the heavy tread of the humans she had begun to know, but many feet, sharp and quick. Her body stiffened, her heart thundering in her chest. She sat up quickly, her eyes wide with fear. Shadows moved in the mist, tall shapes drawing closer. Her people, her tribe, the ones who had cast her out, the ones who had called her worthless, who had mocked her size, now they stood in a line, their weapons raised, their faces hard with hate. The human stood beside her, already gripping his blade, his shoulders tense, his eyes sharp and steady. The girl trembled, torn in two. These were her people, her blood, her family. And yet, they looked at her with nothing but disgust. The leader stepped forward, his voice cruel. There she is, the shame of our kind. He pointed at her as if she were filth. And now she hides behind a human, disgusting. The others laughed, the sound sharp and cold. You do not belong to us, little one. You never did. The girl's chest ached, her throat closing with tears. Her people had found her, but there was no welcome in their eyes, only anger, only scorn, only rejection. She wanted to cry out, to beg them to see her, but her voice was locked deep inside, trapped by years of shame. The human stepped forward, his stance strong. She is under my protection, he said, his voice like stone. The tribe erupted in laughter, cruel and loud. A human protecting her, they jeered. She is not worth protecting. The leader's eyes narrowed, sharp and hateful. Step aside, human. She belongs to us, and we decide her fate. The girl gasped, her body trembling. She looked from the human to her people, her mind spinning. Her heart begged her to run to them, to return, to belong, but their words stabbed deeper than any blade. Worthless, shame, nothing. The same words they had thrown at her since childhood, and still they used them now. The human did not move. Instead, he raised his weapon higher, his eyes blazing. She belongs to no one, he said firmly. The tribe grew furious, their voices rising in anger. They shouted threats, insults, curses, but the human did not step aside. The girl clutched her chest, her tears falling. Her people were here, yet they had already abandoned her again. She thought of the firelight, of the human's words the night before. You are not nothing, he had told her, and now those words burned inside her louder than the shouts of her tribe. Her people pointed their weapons at the human. They demanded he surrender, demanded he give her up, but he did not waver. The girl's heart pounded, her body frozen. She realized this moment was not his choice, it was hers. Slowly she stood, her knees shaking, her hands trembling. Her voice came weak at first, but it grew stronger as she spoke. I am not yours, she cried, her eyes burning with tears. The tribe fell silent, staring at her in shock. Her body shook, but she forced the words out. You never wanted me. You never protected me. You only called me nothing. The leader sneered, his voice sharp as a blade. Because you are nothing, he spat. The girl flinched, her heart twisting, but then she felt the human's hand brush against hers, steady and firm. She looked at him, his eyes unwavering, his presence strong, and she drew her strength from him. No, she said louder, her voice cutting through the mist. I am not nothing, not anymore. Her people laughed bitterly, mocking her, but she did not back down, her small frame tree bulled, yet she stood taller than she ever had before. The human stepped closer, his hand closing over hers. Together they faced the tribe. The girl's voice rang out once more. He is not my enemy, he is my protector. The tribe erupted in rage, their weapons raised again, but she did not hide behind him this time. She stood at his side, her eyes burning with new fire. For the first time in her life, she had chosen. Not fear, not shame, but strength. Her people might laugh, they might call her worthless again, but in that moment, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt free. The mist thickened, the air heavy with the weight of what would come next. Her people stepped forward, ready for battle. The human tightened his grip on her hand, his voice low but steady. Whatever happens, "You are not alone." Her heart ached with those words, filling her with courage she had never known. The tribe's anger clashed against the humans' defiance. The girl stood between them, her past behind her, her future uncertain. But one truth burned brighter than the firelight. She had been cast out, abandoned, forgotten. Yet here she stood, chosen, protected, alive. The mist hung heavy over the ruins. The tribe stood in a wide circle, their weapons gleaming in the pale morning light. Their eyes burned with rage, their voices sharp with hate. The alien girl stood small and trembling, but not hidden, not silent. For the first time, she stood at the human's side, her hand locked in his. The leader stepped forward, his voice like thunder. "You defy us, weakling? You stand with him against your own blood?" His words cut deep, each syllable like a knife. The girl's chest ached, but her voice rose clear. "You are not my blood," she said, her tears shining in her eyes. "My blood does not abandon me. My blood does not call me worthless." The tribe roared with laughter, cruel and sharp. "You think a human will save you?" one of them shouted. "He will throw you away when he is done," another spat. But the human raised his blade, his eyes calm and unbroken. "She is not your prisoner," he said firmly. "She will not be your victim again." The tribe moved closer, their steps heavy, their voices filled with fury. The girl's body shook, but she held the human's hand tighter. Her voice came again, louder than she thought possible. "I will not return to you. I will not crawl at your feet." Her people sneered, their laughter harsh. "You are nothing without us," the leader growled, but the girl's answer came sharp and strong. "I am something with him." The air turned still, the fire inside her words burning brighter than fear. Her people raised their weapons high, ready to strike. The human stepped in front, his blade flashing in the pale light. The girl's heart raced. She knew battle was seconds away, but before the first strike fell, she stepped forward. Her small voice cut the air like a blade. "If you want to hurt him, you must hurt me first." The tribe froze, shocked by her defiance. They had always seen her as weak, silent, broken. But here she stood, choosing her place, her protector, her truth. The leader's eyes narrowed, anger twisting his face. "You would betray us for him?" he shouted. The girl lifted her chin, tears still on her cheeks, but her voice strong. "No," she said, "I betray nothing, for you were never my family." The words shattered the air. The tribe growled in fury. Some stepped forward, blades shaking, but something in her stance made them hesitate. She was small, yes, but her courage was louder than their hate, and behind her stood the human, tall, unyielding, ready. The leader spat on the ground, his eyes filled with rage. "You are dead to us," he hissed. His voice echoed, harsh and final, but the girl did not cry, did not flinch. She only held the human's hand tighter and whispered softly, "Then I am free." The tribe snarled, their anger thick in the air. But no, Nee stepped closer. None dared strike. The human's blade gleamed steady, his presence like stone. At last, the leader turned away, his voice sharp. "Go then, walk with your monster, but do not ever return." With that, the tribe vanished into the mist, their footsteps fading. The silence that followed was heavy. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly, her tears dripping down. Her knees buckled, but the human caught her before she fell. She looked up at him through blurred eyes, whispering, "I thought I would break, but you held me together." His gaze softened, his voice low. "You held yourself together. I only stood beside you." The girl clutched his arm, her voice trembling. "They hated me. They always hated me. And still, I wanted to go back to them." Her lips quivered as she whispered, "But today, I chose you." The human's eyes met hers, steady and calm. "You chose yourself," he said. "And that is the beginning." The fire inside her heart flickered brighter. For so long she had been called worthless. For so long she had been small in the eyes of her people. But in this moment, with a human by her side, she felt stronger than ever before. Not because he had saved her, but because she had spoken, chosen, and stood. The mist thinned as the sun rose higher. The ruins glowed faintly under its light. The girl lifted her face to the warmth, her hand still wrapped in his. Her voice whispered softly, not to him, not to anyone, but to herself. I am not nothing. I will never be nothing again. The human glanced at her, his eyes steady. Are you ready? He asked, his tone calm. She nodded, her lips trembling, but her spirit strong. Yes, she said. Wherever we go, I will not be afraid. Together they walked forward, away from the ruins, away from the shadows of her past. Each step carried the weight of choice. Each step carried the strength of a bond born in fire and mercy. She had expected death when she first saw him, but what she had found was life, and that choice had changed everything.